you. Oh my God, he's making me cry. What a dick. All right. No. Should I do this? No, not going to do it. All right, so let's start off with this. We've got 45 minutes. I'm going to have to pee in 45 minutes. I'm going to do the dance. It's all going to work if you see me doing this. It's not because I got bad rhythm, it's because I got to pee. So you guys are all back from lunch having beers, and I'm just here to say hi. Yes, I'm from Canada. Obviously, the person taking this picture is not. They know better than to do that to bears. And today we're going to talk about, connected experiences, connected devices. There's probably a gazillion words we could use for this, and I guess my main takeaway for you guys is that takeaway. Is that we kind of start thinking about this stuff a little bit differently, and we adopt it in our tool set if we haven't already. And so someone tweeted this image, and I thought it was really funny. It's about the Internet of Things, right? Your cat checked into the litter box. It's raining again. 15 of your things are broken. You haven't left the house. And a lot of people think that this is what the status of the Internet of Things is right now. And and even that term, we've heard it this morning, is a little weird, but it is what it is. And so, when people say it, this is kind of how I feel. I'm kind of like, oh God, again. One more time, there you go. But it is, to borrow from Seb, very much about, stuff and things. So we think about stuff and things, and we think about them talking, over the internet, which is just, tubes that connect together, so you're really not going anywhere, haha on you. And the fact that really these are just tubes with cats in them at some point in time. We have to start considering what this really means and how it, is changing and what this business is. And so, Seb, you made it on a slide. I don't know if I need an extra T, one more T, yeah. I just left it at stuff talking to the interwebs. It's interwebs, by the way, not internet, webs. And you start to think about these things, and they say that by the end of the decade, 50 billion devices are going to be connected. 50 friggin' billion devices, right? That's like this, but this isn't really 50 because it's like 42 because my math sucks. But it's that idea of like so many things are going to be connected, and they say that there's in your home, in your life, for a person, there's potential of 200 things to be connected, 200 devices, right? So who here has a laptop, right? Okay, the only person who probably didn't put their hand up is like my dad, who's in the far corner, who's sitting there with his tower right now. I saw someone look for my dad. My dad's not here, don't worry. Right? But when you think about it, who here has a mobile phone, right? Everyone's going to put up their hand, except for the Luddite in the corner who's typing, right? And there's all sorts of other things. You go home and you have your jam box, you're connected in the car, you have all these like Fitbits, all these devices. Think about it, 200. Like, it should make you feel like this, just a little bit. And sometimes you're kind of like, why would I want 200 devices in my life connected? Like, I'm still struggling to get the goddamn inbox 0, right? And so you start thinking about those things, and right now, people are doing a lot of dumb things because they can, right? And that's how we work in this industry very much. You find a technology, you push it as far as it can go because you can, right? And then you bring it back, and it becomes a little bit more, you find utility out of it. And so, you start to see these things, and people kind of make fun of them. That's what they think it's about. And when we go back, sometimes it's about wearables. For example, Steve Mann, who, if you look him up, he's pretty much the pioneer of wearables. And this is like, something that came up that was taking like photographs. It ends up being almost like, I think it's called iTap, and you start to see these things coming out. Does anyone remember this? Anyone? Am I showing my age? Do you know how much this cost back in I think this was 1976? I think they said it was about $3,900 American, right, for a calculator on your wrist Because you need that all the time, right? Like, oh shit, just gonna divide now, don't mind me. I'm not texting, I'm not tweeting, I'm dividing, it's all good, right? So then you start to think about these things, and you have like other kind of wearables or connected devices that are coming up. You have a ring that's gonna tell you, or ring you can wear that kind of gives you haptic feedback, or kind of like gives you a little indication that you have 5 emails. What the hell, I don't wanna walk around with a ring that's gonna tell me I have 5 emails. I'm trying to forget I have 5 emails, right? But there's these things that are just continually keeping you connected. This was really interesting. I saw this device, and it's coming up, but it's like a Palm Pilot dated, like a wrist weight. I don't know if anyone remembers those. And it's this. It's a Zypad. This exists. The website's actually pretty current. Like, hold on. Clunk. Like, I'm here. Like, it's just ridiculous. So you start to see those things, and you start to see, everyone with their smart bands or Fitbits. Everyone's getting into the market, right? And so everyone is finding, whether it's in wearables or some form of IoT, you're starting to see people tossing their hat in the ring and trying to do interesting things. Google bought Nest, right? That was a big thing. That's a huge thing. Nest really changed and innovated the way that we thought about smart devices in our home, right? It was something that, it was your best friend. It could save you money if you used it right. And Google went and bought that, and there was a lot of people who were just like, oh no, man. Like, you already have all my data. now you're gonna have all my home data. And so people started to get a little, freaked out by it. And you start to see devices like these. I think they're called bleep bleeps, and they're starting to give them a kind of like a personification, giving them a human element almost, and it's starting to get creepy a little. Like, this is like an alarm clock, or you can have little things that you can put on a bag and it'll tell you when something's moving. Nintendo just announced the other day that they have a non-wearable. So now everyone's talking about wearables, and suddenly they have something that's going to track your sleep, it's going to track your heartbeat, it's going to do all that stuff that you might get from a Fitbit or something like that, but it's going to do it without being on your body. It's not invasive. It doesn't require you to remember to put it on your wrist, and it can give you all that health data. And so it's about now, it's about non-wearable, non-invasive. It's about being frictionless, and that's where some of these things are really going, because a lot of those times we all have those devices and we forget to take them. We forget to recharge them, right? And so suddenly you're seeing people are like, these are problems, and we're solving them. And so, you start to look at this landscape, and people are starting to innovate quicker and quicker and quicker. And you ask yourself, okay, that's awesome, I want to use all this stuff, but really, what does it matter to me? Like, what do I care? I'm a web developer, or I build a native app, or I do this, or I do that. And it's, where do I get started becomes one of the big questions. So I'm going to go through kind of just how you can get started really quickly. And, I'm not going to show all sorts of amazing things. I'm going to talk more about doing little things to get your feet kind of in there, and how you can take things away from it, and how you can get comfortable with the taxonomy, with the language, understanding how these things work. And so, number one, play with a microcontroller. Seb was talking about his new workshop, the Internet of Things, maybe to be renamed. By the look of on his face, definitely to be renamed. But you've got to start with these little devices. And one of the problems right now, it's a good one and it's a bad one, there's so much choice. And it's all awkward, right? Because you're thinking, I want a little bit from here, and I want a little bit from there, and the next thing you know, your butt's in someone's face. It's not really working right, and you don't know what you need. And it becomes this learning curve all of a sudden before you even start. And so, choice is good, but it also has that problem of, if you're not sure of how to get started, how do you know? And so, we start talking about things like Arduino. So how many people have heard of Arduino? Okay, that's an awesome number. How many people have an Arduino? How many people have an Arduino that is collecting dust? Same amount of hands. Yeah, right? You're like, awesome, I made a blink, what now? So, laughing because it's true, right? But you have an Arduino, you're using something like Omega, you don't want to necessarily use something lower than that just because of memory. You put on a shield, a Wi-Fi shield, and suddenly you can talk to anything that you want to talk to. There's another version of it that's like the Netduino. There's Raspberry Pi. I mean, Raspberry Pi kind of changed the whole landscape for a lot of people. A little computer, running this whole entire thing. You can plug it in a monitor. You can do all sorts of stuff with it, and it's only 40 bucks. I think I have like 7 of these sitting at home. You have the Arduino, I want to say Young, and this is a weird one. It's really confusing to me. So you have 2 processors sitting on a board. You have the Arduino, and then you have basically what's running the Young, which is going to run like a Linux stack, and now you have to cross-communicate between the 2, right? But it has Wi-Fi, it has everything that you need, so some people, want to start working with these things. Intel has put its foot in the door, right? They have the Edison. Before that, they had the Galileo. And, the Edison is really only the size of a SD card. It's really tiny. But to really make use out of it, you got to put it into this big board. And so you're starting to see things like this. You're starting to see SparkCore. SparkCore is about this big, and it runs Node.js, programmable from the web, but also from USB. And you can get all the pins that you need and everything else. So, you're starting to see this landscape of people creating these really small devices, and they're thinking about how they should be used and where they should be used. They're no longer this big, right? They're getting really, really small, so you can, slip it into a lamp or whatever you need to do. There's another one, the Airboard I just saw that was announced. I don't know much about it. Once again, you can use Bluetooth on it, you can use Wi-Fi, you can use all these things. So there's a lot of choices for where you get started, and just to get started, you just got to pick one and kind of go with it and play with it a little bit. When we get into, communication between software and hardware, that's where the fun kind of begins, right? Because, 5 or 6 years ago, those of you who bought an Arduino, you went home, you did the blink sketch, you're like, awesome, LED's blinking. Ding, 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 ding. I don't know why I should be so excited about it. I am, but then the thrill is gone, right? And now you're starting to see, wow, it's so much easier to bring in software, so much easier to make experiences that are a little bit more interesting, a little bit more meaningful. And so, there's a whole bunch of kind of communication stuff that goes along. And so when we start talking about communication with software and hardware, you've got an old one, for example, and I'm going to go through some protocols, but not all of them apply to everything that you might do. But there's, open sound control that's been around for a while, and it's really intended for musical instruments. And people have kind of been hijacking it to make devices talk, right? To make things talk to each other. You have, Bluetooth, right? Anyone who has or had a Nike band, might have had their Bluetooth or any of that stuff that would just basically transfer your data, sync everything that you need. It's wireless, it's inexpensive, it's pretty automatic. As soon as there's kind of like a protocol and a connection made, you don't pay any attention to it anymore, really. You get into WebSockets. And so, WebSockets is like one of the things that once you discover how these work, and you start working with them in different environments, they change everything that you do. And it suddenly becomes your go-to solution. And so when people think about WebSockets, they think about chat applications, multi-user games. WebSockets amazing for the Internet of Things because a lot of these things can now run things like Node and whatnot. You get into something that's called Spacebrew. Has anyone heard of Spacebrew? Not a single hand. Yes, this is the takeaway. You're going to learn one thing. Awesome. Okay, Spacebrew, basically Node.js server running WebSockets, allows you to connect. They consider themselves an open source toolkit for connecting creative spaces. Really good when you know you need to connect this to this to this. Not when they're going to have multiple connections and you don't know where they're coming from. So if you know you're going to connect your lamp, and it's probably going to be, you're going to control it from your phone or something along those lines, Spacebrew is awesome to check out. There's also, Autobahn. So you can look at this brings up a whole other kind of scenario of how you're going to use this stuff, but open source real-time framework, used for the web, mobile, IoT. I'm just reading off a slide. That's so boring. It's like you guys can't read or something. Hey, just let me read this for you. But it starts using things like, web app messaging protocol, and you're getting into, you can use it from anywhere, Python, JS, Android. So now you're starting to see the beauty of some of these things. I can take my Android phone, I can control my lamp, which can now text something else, which now connects to my car. I don't know why you'd want to do it. It's just like connected devices in the kitchen, like a fridge tweeting at you. I don't understand that, but you can do it, right? I mean, maybe it's a good thing, like, no, Stacey, you don't really want that. No, goddamn, I want that sandwich. No, don't do it, right? So you're starting to see these things, these messaging frameworks come up. Google Cloud, Microsoft. You're starting to see these big frameworks that can handle like massive amounts of devices and things being connected. And that's when we get into data, right? Because it's always about data. And when you start getting into this, a lot of people start talking about, oh, I can get my device to talk to something else, and you forget about data. Data is where the money is. Data is where the big business is, right? That favorite phrase, big data. Every time I hear that phrase, I'm like, I'm going to punch myself. I'm going to punch myself, then I might punch you. And when you think about big data and you search for it on Google, even Google doesn't really know what it means. Google's like, I think it's the Matrix, maybe, right? And so you're starting to see that that's where a lot of these companies are going towards. They're kind of creating these platforms for data, for all that kind of stuff, because that's where the power is. That's where the smart comes into devices. If you have a device that's collecting your data, it can now start to do machine learning, for example, to figure out when are the times that you're turning up your thermostat. Can it predict when that's going to happen? Can it automatically do it for you, for example? And so once you start getting into that piece of it, that's where you're starting to see this industry that's just going to bust out. And I think they said something like $35 million in the next 5 years between processors, sensors, networks, right? And so when you come to data and platforms, you're starting to see these companies are really thinking about data. They're trying to make it available to you. SparkFun, which is like a company that you can go and buy a whole bunch of sensors and processors and stuff like that, they opened up a data platform. Spark, the little device, they have a data platform. You're starting to see all these platforms come about. You're starting to see home automation really be talked about all the time now. And it's, people are starting to announce what they're talking about, what they're planning. We have Apple who announced HomeKit. You have Logitech who doesn't really care about home automation, but they want to own the app, because all these things have an app, right? So I have Hue lights, I need an app. I have this, I need an app. So eventually, you're going to have 50, 60 apps on your phone. That's going to be pretty annoying, right? But Logitech is thinking, I want to own the app space. I want to own that. I want to be the universal controller for all of it, right? And so we start thinking about those things, and you're like, okay, awesome, I'm sold. Maybe I should be playing with this. Maybe I should be doing something with this. What do I need to do? And it's one of those things where, how do you change a space? How do you start working in the space? And unintended use, to me, is innovation. A lot of times people think, oh, they totally just changed the landscape. Sometimes it's putting out a technology and people using it in a way that you didn't expect that is actually the real innovation at the end of the day. I just said at the end of the day. Can someone come up and slap me, please? I hate that phrase. So, Raspberry Pi, right? Someone decided, I'm going to take a Raspberry Pi, and I'm going to just launch it up into the sky. I'm going to launch it up in a satellite balloon, and I'm going to take photos from space. Do you think the guy who made the Raspberry Pi thought, yeah, this is going to be in space at some point, and I'm going to see all these photos? Nah, you can, bet $100. You can also bet that when he thought about creating it, he didn't think, well, maybe someone's going to make like a video cabinet out of it. And now they can play all their old games or any of those kind of things. So playing with these kind of things, you can start to think about different aspects of how they should be used based on what's interesting to you. And I guess that's where we kind of get into the idea of play, right? We spend so much time on the web right now where you're on a site and you're just like, God damn, I just want to get the info. Don't show me this shit. I don't care about all this other stuff. I just want to get what I need and I want to leave, right? You're on a phone, you're at home, whatever those kind of things are. People talk a lot about delight, right? Where is the delight? Where does that exist anymore in the web? And the reality is, does it really need to exist there anymore when we kind of have this technology that's pushing us outside of the browser? And that's what's exciting. A lot of the more interesting experiences are the ones that are physical. And so you can start to embrace that aspect of play, right? Everyone's like encouraging you to play a little bit, you know, have your little sandbox. And sometimes you have to figure out how it makes sense. So how do you get started with just playing, I guess? And one of it is sometimes you just have a little bit of fear, right? You're like looking in from the outside and then like thinking, maybe I'll do this, and then, oh shit, a shark, right? And then you think, well, okay, so maybe I can do this. What am I going to start playing with? I'm going to learn something new, which is always scary, right? What's the worst that could probably happen to me? It's electronics. When I started, I was like, oh man, electronics, okay. I could singe my eyebrows. I could be like, no eyebrows, totally set myself, you know, basically on fire. Which, this is my fear, it really is. And I know, isn't that horrible? And then talking to a friend of mine who's actually electronics guy, his fear, he doesn't know software, his fear was that he was going to erase his computer. He was trying to format an SD card, and he was like, this thing came up, and I'm really afraid. Like, I know it's basic. I might choose the wrong drive, so just by formatting an SD card, I could erase everything on my hard drive. You know, that's scary to him. And then you think, well, you know, okay, software is pretty resilient, right? And then you start to think, well, hardware is pretty resilient. You know, it's more resilient than we think. You think, you know, no matter what, I'm never going to do anything as dumb as this, right? First of all, I wouldn't use that kind of a flip-flop, all right? Just saying, you know. But you think, like, I'm never going to do something quite like this. I need to get over that. I need to get over the fact that I can't, you know, I can do more than just blink something. So I'm really fortunate, I guess, in my job because I get the freedom to kind of explore different things that are interesting to me. And over the past, you know, 6 months or so, I've been just playing with a lot of random things. And, you know, there's gonna warn you, there's no lasers. I know, can you say that a little loud? Oh, everyone loves lasers. But, you know, it's just like random little things where I just had a little idea and I wanted to execute them as quickly as I could and see where I could go with them. And the funny thing is that as soon as I started doing that and as soon as I started showing some people at work, all of a sudden I got pulled into stuff. And back in Seattle, we have this whole kind of really crazy maker garage. And I got pulled into this whole thing at the maker garage just because I was doing these little experiments. And I got pulled into something much bigger and greater. And it was like really awesome to have that opportunity. But it never would have happened if I hadn't started just trying to figure out simple little things. And so I'm just going to walk through some of the things and where the ideas came from. And, you know, you can be like, yeah, that's dumb. Yeah. But you finished it, right? And sometimes it's better to have an idea executed than one to never, ever to have been considered, right? So one of the things I came up with is I used to work at Big Spaceship, and we used to have, you know, designers sitting beside developers. And as a developer, how many people here are developers? Yeah, a good chunk. How many people here are designers? Okay. You have that moment where you write a line of code, and no matter what you do, you can't get it to compile, right? So you're just like, oh, God, yeah. Write a line of code, add 50 bugs. Fix that bug, add 50 more, right? And it becomes this little dance you're doing with, like, your computer there, and the computer's winning, right? But then there becomes that moment, that one glorious goddamn moment, right? And you're like, you write 50 lines of code, and it compiles. Has anyone had that moment? Right? And you're just like, you know, for a minute, okay, shit, yeah, I'm a golden god. 50 lines of code, not a problem. And you're thinking, goddamn magic. Just like, willed that to happen, right? And then you're just like, holy shit, do you guys see that? Like, I don't know what to do here. This is amazing. But no one understands that feeling because the designer's sitting beside you and is like, I'd do that all day, you know? And so you're like, can I high-five myself? No, you can't high-five yourself. I've high-fived myself in public, and I got ridiculed like there was no tomorrow. So then you're like, okay, I need to celebrate this moment. And so I thought, okay, I wanted to create something for the shop that was, you know, along these lines, capturing that moment. And so, like most, how many people work at an agency? Yeah, okay, so you'll probably be like, yeah, everything I say at this point. So, it was at that point where the company was like, we need an innovation lab. We need people to be R&Ding, right? We're gonna put you in a room, and it's gonna be our innovation lab, and we're gonna put things you can innovate with, and innovation's gonna happen. Like you magically fucking walk into a room and you're like, boom, ideas all over the place, right? Does not happen that way. CEOs don't understand that. So they gave me a room. This is what my room looked like. Inspiring, right? It's like walking in a jail cell and just looking at the wall, right? And they're like, oh, you can have this bookcase. Awesome. So I started to walk around and I started to get all the components that, the agency had. And I was like, holy crap, they really did have a lot of stuff that no one was using. No one really knew. We had a MakerBot that was sitting in a corner that needed to be fixed. The leveling was screwed. We had Arduinos all over the place. So I brought it all together into this little shop, and I would hide away once a week just to teach myself stuff. And so what I was trying to do with this first project is I told my CEO, I said, well, here's what I'm going to build. And he's like, oh, God, please don't tell me. Please don't tell me any of your ideas anymore. Just do them, and then we'll see what happens. So I told him, okay, well, I want to build basically an installation where that moment where you compile 50 lines of code, or you solve that amazing design problem, or maybe you got the client to say, yes, whatever it may be in an agency environment, that you can go up and you can just be like, yeah, booty bump, right? You hit something on the wall, and you have like 8 seconds of, gloriousness with like sound and lights and all that shit. Not gonna get annoying, right? But I was like, I really want to build this. And, and I thought about it, and I was like, okay, well, I haven't touched Arduinos in a while. I haven't touched, like, any of this electronics. I need to get, like, 2 disco lamps and, like, this crazy idea. I need to do relays, all this stuff. So, started kind of figuring it out. And I worked with a friend. It's the first friend I made in Brooklyn. Yeah, you can, aw. Yeah, it was on my own. I made it on my own. And he was an electronics guy, and so I was his software, side, and he was my electronics side, and so he kind of started to teach me things. And so we went through and we figured out like the relay switching and all that kind of stuff. Like that looks scary as hell to me still. I'm like, I can't believe I kind of was doing that. And then the day came where we got a pair of my jeans, and we put chicken wire around my form, and we filled it with foam. And we stuffed this mannequin. And we had 2 sensors, that basically when you would tap it, and once again, this was a quick prototype in a day, where you could tap it, it would just get the lights going, and it would play you a song, Major Lazer upon the dance floor, not gonna get annoying. Only play 8 seconds, and then it would stop. So that's kind of where I ended up with that. Really quick, something really simple. I learned so much doing it. I learned Raspberry Pi. I learned basic sensors, GPIOs. I learned like doing relay switches. And I learned how to make a bad mannequin form. That's the saddest looking butt. And we had it up in the shop for 2 days before people decided, yeah, I can't handle this anymore. So, once again, something very simple. Connected controller. This one should be pretty good. Let's see if I can go through this. So, how many people love to read SkyMall on the plane? Anyone know who SkyMall? SkyMall is like the magazine that solves all the problems you didn't have. It's like the Container Store, same kind of thing. Like, you didn't know that you weren't comfortable until now. You didn't know you didn't have style. You didn't know you couldn't make friends unless you had this. You didn't know your quality of life was shite, You didn't know how to do business, right? You have fur babies, you didn't know what to do with them, right? And so I was on the plane reading SkyMall, and I saw this weird-looking cat, and I was like, oh, cat ladies are the best. And I like that stereotype. I had 2 cats, so I can own it. And I thought, oh, I want to build something, just for the cat lady, and if it appeared in SkyMall, right? Like that was like my prime achievement. And so I started to think about, okay, a little bit of typical kind of cat lady, like can't go out on a Friday night, I'm busy home dying with my cats. I'm sleeping, my cat's watching me, it's so peaceful, but really it's just waiting to see if I'm still breathing so it can eat my face, right? I have a lot of cats, and I start to give attention to one over the other, and I don't know what to do about it. I get confused. You know, maybe I go out and I buy like cat food, and I get the wrong type, and maybe I'm logged into Facebook still, and there's my cat, like, you know, didn't get me the right cat food, posting pictures of himself, you know, all over my Facebook. I come home all pissed off because I see that this has happened, and cat's like, what? Don't know how to knock on a door, right? Go into the kitchen, cat's helping himself to like all my grapes. You know, I'm in the kitchen, I slip and fall, as is the fate of every cat lady that you know, and this is what I see. And they're just wondering when I'm going to feed them. They don't give a shit about 911. So I start to think about these things, and I start to research, like, can I get like a kind of like a real-looking cat? And you'd be surprised what you can find. You'd be surprised. And so you can see these kind of weird figurines. I mean, look at those eyes. They're all like, just like, yeah, I'm going to eat your face. And, you know, you can find ones that look like this. They look so like, you know, serene. And, you know, I stumbled upon this on eBay, and I realized, you know, you can get these little cats, and they look big, right? So I'm like, oh, yeah, that would be really creepy. And you start reading the descriptions. They're made out of rabbit hair. I don't know. I'm going to kill a whole bunch of rabbits to make this little cat thing for you. Doesn't seem right. So I bought one thinking it was going to be big, even though I looked at the dimensions, and I was just like, whatever, I'm spatially challenged. And ends up being this big, like literally this big, like the size of a mouse. So it's like, oh, that takes me in an interesting kind of direction. And so I thought, oh yeah, if I have conductive thread, and if we take out the eyes and we add LEDs, I have a mouse. You know what I'm saying? So I'm like, yeah. So, you know, we started to do that. And yeah, just wait. You know, it gets pretty creepy because I was like, okay, I'm going to go to Instagram. I'm going to find all the photos that are tagged Kitteh, K-I-T-T-E-H, which brings up some interesting stuff sometimes. And so I can scroll through pictures of Instagram. And if I want to save them, I just tap the head, and the eyes go like this, and it puts it in my Dropbox, right? Cat lady, I got your back. Just for you, $19.99, 3 easy installments, right? But once again, something very, very ridiculous, a little creepy, I'm the first to admit, but covers a bunch of different technologies I didn't necessarily know, right? I was, you know, I picked up processing. I used a little teensy here that I ended up replacing with a Wi-Fi Spark core, you know, those kind of things. And I started to play with those things. And here's a screenshot of kind of Spacebrew, what it looks like. And what Spacebrew does is it has an admin for you. And so you basically say, in all of these kind of communications with PubSub, you're like, basically, I'm publishing or I'm subscribing. And at some point, you probably have like a dealer or broker in the middle who's kind of navigating those calls. And so for Spacebrew, what happens is that you can just say, I'm publishing or I'm subscribing or I'm doing both to any of these messages, and it shows up in an admin, and all you do is start connecting them, right? And it's kind of nice because you can see when these things start changing. If I sent a message that was selection, I can see that it's changed here. I know that it's being sent. And so I started playing with all these kind of different technologies a little bit. Would I use this in the future? Maybe for small things. Multiple, many devices? Probably not. I'd probably go with a heavier weight. But again, something really fun to play with. I made a game that I extended and made it a little bit more physical because, you know, part of my job, I get told, hey, you should go learn Unity. And I'm like, I love Unity. Unity is actually really fun. How many people know Unity? Yeah, Unity is like a great tool. You know, coming from Flash, shouldn't say that, but coming from Flash, Unity is like great. You know, it's one of those great tools. And so, you know, I built a game in a couple hours, and it was just like nothing too crazy. I picked up Illustrator and made these owls kind of like chirp, and you know, it's kind of like a Simon game. They did them in sequence, and then you had to repeat the sequence. You know, always thinking about my niece when I'm building these kind of things. And then I thought, well, how can I extend this? So I thought, you know what would be awesome? I'm going to make my own like DDR mat, right? Anyone play Dance Dance Revolution? No one played Dance? Am I the only? Oh, there's one guy. Yeah, we'll dance off later. Yeah. Yeah. I can't. I suck at it, man. I do this the whole time. So DDR mat is like, mat on the floor. I'm sure you've seen the videos. And basically, you go in the sequence and things light up, right? And so I bought this material from Adafruit, $4. It's called Velostat. And you can make really good pressure sensors very, very quickly and very cheaply. Usually a pressure sensor will cost you about $9, $12. This will cost you $4, this will cost you $4, and I can make 4 out of them. And so I made a really bad-looking DDR map. Well, that was pointless. But this one's good. You'll see my fancy footwork here. I'll just set you up for this. That's how I play. Who plays a game like that, by the way? 1 foot only. Like, my other foot's like somewhere else, and I can't use it, right? But I started to build this DDR mat that worked with the game, and once again, this was like within a day, had it up and running. Hardware is, you got to debug hardware just like you do software. You kind of got to work backwards and think about all those things, make sure the smallest units are correct before you move on, and had this running. And it was one of those things that was just super simple, but really, really rewarding in a way that building a 3-month web site just would never give me that satisfaction. Here's another one, because I can. I blame this one on beer. So, Skrill T-Rex. How many people know Skrillex? Couple, right? I had to look it up. How many people know dubstep? Right? So, we were at a conference. I'll come back to that one, it's good. We were at a conference and we were hacking, and it was really late at night. And one of the girls that I was working with, she's starting to get really loopy. It's 3 a.m. and she's getting weird, right? So she's walking around like whoop, 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 like just a walking dubstep machine. And I was like, holy shit, that's awesome. Keep doing it, keep doing it. For like 4 hours. I mean, she just went. It was awesome. She would go around, sing songs. Everything was in dubstep. And I was like, oh, I want to capture that somehow. I don't know how to do it. And so I was like, oh, okay, dubstep. Okay, I started to research, about dubstep. I watched more YouTube videos than I ever need to see in my life. And then started to think about, well, Skrillex, right? And I was like, well, yeah, it's kind of Skrillex, and maybe if I add a little bit of this. And then, I had a couple beers, and I was screwing up my Amazon purchase history, and I bought a T-Rex. Because who doesn't love T-Rexes with their short little cute arms, right? And I bought a T-Rex, and I was like, Skrill T-Rex. And again, something I built in all of an hour, where I put a flex sensor in his mouth, and I just mapped, basically how open and closed it was in terms of the flex and the pressure. And I used, just a basic Arduino with a sensor, and I used processing to basically allow you to drop bass with a T-Rex. Because who doesn't want to do that, right? I also added some bad hair. That was pretty good. My coworker donated that. And I did something like this, where you can see badly the T-Rex, and I was playing with some visuals and processing. And I was like, okay, well, I wonder if I can get him to drop some bass. You can see my bad code there. Okay, so I have epic fail, epic fail. There you go. So, in my mind, I'm like, yeah, can you imagine someone just I don't think this is cool at all, by the way, but someone DJing with just puppets, yeah, dropping bass, right? So, I took this, and I'm going to actually hook it into Ableton and use the MIDI controls, via that. But once again, something really, really, quick. Another thing I built in a day, maybe day and a half, was sometimes I have those moments where I'm sitting in my apartment all by myself, and I'm sad. And I try not to look at my phone. And I think, well, wouldn't it be nice to have a light that would just light up when someone retweeted or favorited something stupid I said on Twitter? And so I built basically, a heart, a nice little Zelda heart, and I put in some LEDs, and I would just constantly watch. Every time Twitter, someone retweeted or something, it would run an animation. And, built it in a box, and it sits in my house. At work, they said, hey, we have, Cortana APIs. And I'm thinking, Cortana, awesome. But I'm thinking Halo. So I used to play Halo, and I was like, yeah, I love Cortana. They're like, no, 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 like the Window Phone APIs. I was like, oh, okay. Oh, what am I, what do you want me to do? They're like, just build something cool. So I basically went and discovered a laser cutter, lost my shit with it, and made the Cortana image and had a proximity sensor so that when you come up to it, it notices that you're close, and it connects to a phone that runs an app that's basically going to start a conversation with you. So the conversation basically goes that you're telling Cortana to turn down the music, and she keeps telling you that you're too old, and then switches the music on you, right? Something really, really simple, built in a day. So I guess, just looking at those things, quick prototypes, things that, you could just kind of get the idea out and eke it out and put it out there. Like, how do you get started doing this? And, first off, go buy yourself some equipment, cheap stuff, and give yourself a very simple idea, right? Seek out collaborators. Everyone wants to help. Everyone wants to see you build something cool, and or build something creepy. People like creepy or weird, and so trust me. So you tell someone an idea, and if it's weird enough, they'll be like, "I'm on board," and you've got free help. You got to play for the sake of playing. I don't think that certain environments are meant for play anymore. I think those times are gone. I think browser might be one of them. But there's other places to play, and you should definitely embrace those. And just play. Just have a dumb idea, execute it, and just kind of see where it leads you. And hardware is a really fun place to be playing. Start small, think big. Start small. Give yourself something really small. Think about where it could take you. Here's the big one. Do something and finish it. This is my biggest thing. I have a whole thing that's on my wall. It's just like, I got to finish stuff. If you don't finish it, it's not executed. It's not done. It's not going to get you further ahead. Make more. Just make more stuff. Constantly be making more stuff with your hands, getting a little bit more physical. Basic resources and inspiration. Again, Adafruit, SparkFun, Hackaday, Instructables, Creative Applications. Go buy an inventor's kit at SparkFun. Go buy a intro to Arduino. Revisit your Blink sketch. Master that. And take it way further than that, because we're definitely at the place where we can do those kind of things now. It's pretty exciting. Thanks, I guess.